Good evening. I just want to welcome everyone tonight to a very special evening. My name is Stuart Heitman, and I'm the co-host of tonight, co-chair of tonight's event, along with my wife, Andrea. It is great to be here this special evening, and I also have to say that we have some unnamed co-chairs of this event that I have to sort of give credit to. They've put so many hours into tonight's evening, on the phone all the time, and so I just want to recognize the unnamed co-chairs of tonight's evening, Bob Zinner and Jordy Zinner. So Bob and Jordy. Now we're here tonight really to celebrate really the life and the impact of Wendy Zinner. I think everybody here has been impacted in some way or another by Wendy. She was one of those unique people. She had an impact on on this community in a profound way, but not just as the community as a whole, but really on an individual level. She really impacted so many people. She was really, just meeting her and her warmth and her incredible hachnasas orchim, being constantly having guests at her place, people just going right through her place, and the person who said that you don't gain weight on Shabbos obviously was not invited to Wendy's. I mean, the incredible food she strolled out, and just the warmth when you went through her place, it was so unique. She touched so many people in this community. She was like on the community level, she was so dedicated. She was on the board. First of all, she's legendary for her events that she organized, for Aish and beyond Aish. She was on the board of Aish Toronto. She was on the board of the Village Shul. At the same time, she really was. She was dedicated to our community in such a strong way. When I was the president of Aish Toronto, she was my right-hand person. I knew when I needed something, I could lean on Wendy. And that was her uniqueness. She was so dedicated. She was always there for people. She contributed so much to our community. And it was really a blessing to know her. I think we're all going to experience her specialness in tonight's evening. We're also actually going to, all the money that was raised for tonight is actually raised for Aish Toronto's mentorship program, which is dedicated also to Wendy. Okay, so we raised actually up to this point $136,000 towards the mentorship program. We're also going to be celebrating the inaugural Wendy Zinner Legacy of Leadership Award, and we're going to be recognizing the outstanding leadership of a number of individuals here. Mrs. Raquel Levine, Mrs. Barbara Nightingale, and Mrs. Risa Levine-Weisdorf. So it really is going to prove to be a very incredible evening, inspiring evening tonight. Now, I was asked to introduce our first speaker, Rebbetzin Lori Palatnik. But that sort of presents me with a little bit of a problem, because how are you supposed to introduce somebody who everybody in this room knows who she is? I mean, it would be silly if I was to say that she was the first and founding Rebbetzin of the Village Shul, because everybody knows that already, right? And it wouldn't make any sense to say that she was the founder of what's considered one of the most effective and largest outreach programs in the Jewish world, the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project, which is now named Momentum. Because you all already know that already. And, oh yeah, did you know that she has 5 children? Yeah, I guess you knew that too, okay. And it would absolutely make no sense for me to say that she is one of the most sought after female speakers in the Jewish world today. She's spoken in Europe, in Israel, North America, South America, all around, because of course you already know that. Okay, did you know her husband's name is Yaakov? And he was the rabbi of the village shul here. Okay, so obviously makes no sense for me to actually introduce her. So Lori, would you just please come up and say some words for everyone? We appreciate it.
Okay, that was the sweetest intro I have ever had anywhere in the world. So beautiful. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Some of you may or may not know, but today, Rebbetzin Dina Weinberg passed away, and Reb Noach's wife. And 2 hours ago, she was laid to rest. And I was with Andrew and Stewart, and we watched it on live stream, and my husband was there, and their son, Ari, was there. And I just want to share with you that none of us would be standing here or sitting here or being in this building if it wasn't for Rebbetzin Weinberg, because Rebbetzin Weinberg had a very deep impact on my life. You know, you have parents who bring you into this world, and then you have spiritual parents who bring you in to the world to come. In 1985, I was on the first Aish Torah Jerusalem Fellowships, and I met Rebbetzin Weinberg. And I was a little bit of a handful, but I have to tell you, I ended up staying, not getting on the plane and staying there and checking myself into Iyat, into Kiryat Sanz, which we saw today for the funeral. And they spoke in front of their building. So Rebbetzin Weinberg, they kept saying that she is, that some of the qualities that she had was chesed in the purest way, and a sense of taking responsibility. And my girls called me up when the word went out that she had died. So my daughters called me up and to comfort me, and they knew it because it was very heavy for me. And they said, my daughter said that, she said, I just want you to know that Devorah, her daughter, my granddaughter, she said she fell asleep last night singing Purim songs. She's 3 years old. And she goes, I know that she would not be singing those songs, and she wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Rebbetzin Weinberg. So any small impact that we had on this community, this building, so many people in this room. So Reb Noach passed away many years before, and the loss of Rebbetzin Weinberg is very deep. And my kids say, my daughters were saying, Ima, I can't believe you're not in Israel and you can't go to the funeral or pay a shiva call. But Hashem places you every place for a reason when you are there for a reason. And I said, I'm going to be at the village shul tonight. And I'm going to be speaking about Wendy and introducing a beautiful video about her. And I just felt, and I got the permission of Bob and Jordy to share with you, because it was so, it's such a, on Momentum we call it HP, a higher power, hashkacha pratit, that it was today, that was her funeral. Because when they were talking about chesed and responsibility, that was Wendy. What is chesed? What is loving kindness? I remember years ago, now we get involved in so many people's lives, and there are people who come to us and want to convert. And there's so many Jewish people to reach. Like, you really don't want to, be distracted, and sometimes, it's very, sometimes high maintenance. So how do we know who's sincere? So we went to Rabbi Moshe Lowy here in Toronto. We asked him, how do we know if somebody who's coming to convert is sincere? He said, look for chesed. Look for chesed. It's the sign of a Jew. We're a nation of chesed, of loving kindness. So what is chesed? If I drop flowers at your house, is that chesed? It's nice, but it's not chesed. What is chesed? Chesed is that you're not feeling well, or you're going through a hard week, or you're having a hard time, and I drop flowers at your house. That's chesed. Chesed is not what I feel like doing. Chesed is you have a need, and I want to fulfill it. That was Wendy. She looked for people's needs. She listened for people's needs. And she wanted to fulfill it. Rebbetzin Weinberg taught us, it's not enough to be good. She demanded that we be great. Nobody wants the rabbi to say at their funeral, she was okay. He was pretty darn average. Everybody wants the rabbi to say, she was great. He was great. And this is why. It's not hard. It wasn't hard for the rabbi to say that at Wendy's funeral, because she was great. I'm going to watch a film now to learn why.
Shali is Shelchem. What's mine and what's yours, Shalah, is all about her.
Her life was guided by the differences that she could make.
Her essence was a desire to give and to make things better.
If somebody needed something, she was there.
They said really, if she liked you, she loved you.
Very, very driven, but only l'shem shamayim.
She wanted to build leaders.
She was just a terrific person. She smiled through life.
Okay, my first connection with Aish Torah was reading an ad in the Canadian Jewish News, which said, would you like to learn one-on-one with a rabbi?
And somebody called me up and said, there's a guy that wants to learn about prayer. So I called them up, headed down to the insurance office.
Revelatory for me and difficult for Wendy in the beginning because she thought our Judaism was quite comfortable and it was conservative.
And we never saw his wife. So there was an event and he brought his wife. And so he brought her over to me. He goes, this is Wendy. And he was so excited for her to meet me. And Wendy's vibe was totally like an iceberg to me. Like, I don't like you. I don't like anything about you. Go away, stay away from my husband.
I think she said something like, oh, you're the one that's learning about prayer with my husband. And I smiled thinking, yeah, that's great. And she kind of looked at me and said, okay, we'll see.
So what happened with this iceberg? So what happened is she had a baby.
We had Jordana. There were meals from the community.
So we sent meals and the iceberg started to melt.
She found it right from the beginning was this incredible community.
Next step was when she began meeting people who were role models for her.
Harold and Yetta. That was Wendy's mentor, was Yetta.
And she really looked up to them. She said, what are you doing here? So if you are there, there must be something here. And I think the final step was one of the early events. I said to Ephraim after the event, I said, you really could use Wendy. I said, you should speak to her and ask her to be part of organizing.
She was the consummate mother, the consummate cook, the consummate entertainer, the consummate party planner.
She was a woman that everybody loved, a woman that everybody wanted to be friends with. She was everybody's mother.
She was my best friend. She was my confidant. She was an incredible mother to me.
She's a very positive person, very happy and always seeing on the bright side.
She always noticed the little things. The little things always mattered.
She just always seemed to have time for any act of chesed that she could possibly think of.
Wendy was all heart and action.
She threw herself into all these things with love and her full heart. She never did anything half measure.
She held herself to such a high standard.
The chizuk and the koyach that she had was from doing for others. It was like that was her gas, that was her energy and her fuel. I really believe that.
If there was somebody who needed something, you know, whatever it wasn't, she didn't look around for how could they get it. It was her job.
She was the epitome of a modern woman. She was a role model, she really was. She was a role model for me. She was a role model for lots of women who were out there trying to raise a family and work full time and get involved in the community.
Because we were Balchuvas, we adopted, everybody was an aunt and uncle.
Our families became like a family. It wasn't just friends, we basically family, and I became Uncle Peter.
When she adopted you and your family, she adopted your children and anybody else who was close to you.
Wendy played a role in my life as a quasi-mother, sister, and friend.
And those nephews and nieces adored Wendy and looked to her for guidance. They were really surrogate, secondary mother relationships.
Biggest love other than her children was food, and being able to show her love through that was such a big thing for her as well.
This Avraham and Sarah way of life, where she really was like the Akeres Habayis, like she took her home and she opened up the tents on all four sides, and it was like you knew you could go there, and people would have such a warm experience at her house.
I think Wendy was known for her hachnasas orchim, welcoming guests on Shabbos.
Food after food after food after food, and it was, everything was amazing.
Whenever I came, she made sure she had lemon pie for me, because that was my favorite.
Sushi pizza is pretty good. Like, Shabbat, she would make that? Yeah, it's good.
It's an elaborate 10-course meal, and anyone who's ever been at their table will understand what that means.
Wendy's rule of thumb was, you don't want a guest ever to feel like taking a second helping is going to reduce the amount of food on the table.
When you went to a Shabbos table at my sister's, there was always the tried and true. I mean, there were things there, but there was always, you were going to find something new and unique.
As soon as you walk in to her home, she's there beaming and welcoming you.
That love, brought, newcomers who had never had a Shabbat before.
She literally connected everybody in that shul. Everybody was connected through her table.
Wendy had to deal with the fact that I would constantly bring people home. If there was a person who didn't have a place for Shabbos, it was like I was, Goodwill hunting.
The singing starts, and the melodies were beautiful from Bob's side of the family, and Wendy and him would sing, and then later the kids joined in and sang, and you felt the spirit of Shabbat right then and there. You couldn't mistake it. You couldn't mistake the magic of it.
Wendy was all about, when she was in event mode, she was all about the event. She knew that her team around her was really good.
Wendy, Nancy Rubenstein, and I, we worked together.
Her philosophy of how to do things was to enable people and to give them responsibility, to give them guidance, and then give them independence.
Wendy, she always tried to be cutting edge and what can be done differently.
Everything that she did was always pulled off with grace, beauty, and perfection.
She had a vision for everything, not just for the gala. She just had a vision for everything, and she knew how to execute it in a great way that made everybody happy.
And they were always hugely successful. They not only made lots of money, but they created a community.
We always said that the goal was for it to be a Kiddush Hashem.
There's not too many people our age that would be able to build a shul.
Actually, the property was found by my wife because she identified that the Shell gas station was being shut down, so I was then able to pursue and actually purchase the property. And Wendy was my right-hand person, so to speak, in the whole project.
She had executive, corporate, intimate personality skills that were making him like, I've never seen anything like this. She's a whirlwind, but she gets everything done.
Quite often she was a stellar negotiator and arbitrator and moderator.
It's a thankless task because she has to tell everybody, no, it can't be done that way.
Even when what she had to say might not be welcomed, she had a way of saying it that made it possible for people to hear her.
Her blood, sweat, and tears and hopes and joys and love are in every brick, every mortar. Like nothing I'd ever seen on her face when it was finally finished. It was just a pride and a feeling of accomplishment that was unequaled in her life.
That day, when it opened, there were like tears. It just came together, and it was because of her. Wendy always wanted to make the shul a better place.
She wanted Aish to be what she wanted her home to be.
But in terms of how she was at a board meeting, she really does care for each person there.
She listened to everybody. She listened to everyone's opinions. She still had a roadmap that she knew she had to get to, but by just part of the thing is if you know you're being listened to, that's half the battle.
She would always acknowledge you, acknowledge your points, and then would say, but perhaps, is it possible?
Shalom Bayit was very, very important to her. And again, she would do it with such grace, though.
If there was ever going to be, like, people speaking in a way they shouldn't speak, or people talking to a rabbi the way she wouldn't have it. And it was as if she was like, I'm the mother of the place. So here's how it's going to go, in the most benevolent, loving way. The village shul in Aish, Toronto, she has early roots in founding and building Aish, Toronto, and the village shul. So, and she's stayed involved since the inception, right in the beginning. So a lot of the initiatives and things that exist today, like, all have her DNA in it.
I mean, I think that in terms of how she's affected the Jewish community of Toronto, basically whatever we've done is to a certain extent because of her.
When I think about Wendy, like, my first thought is not her philanthropy or her cooking. My first thought is her dedication to her family. So Wendy loved her kids, and she loved her husband, and she wanted to make sure that their lives were the best. And part of making their lives the best was to create this environment for them in the village shul, in Aish Torah, in Toronto, in the world, that was peaceful and loving and kind and considerate.
So I think she got pleasure when she was able to help somebody navigate, whether it was an organization to navigate that event or a person to navigate their life. That's what gave her the most pleasure.
When the place is full of strollers, or there's a kids program, or there's something for couples or families, or she sees pictures or videos. Sometimes there were periods where she couldn't come, but she would watch and look at every video and all the pictures, and she would call me up and tell me, she would send me these text messages about, like, just nachas that she got from our community, from the Jewish people being engaged. It really gave her a lot of joy.
Taking care of everybody, looking after everybody was really her hallmark, and people felt that, and they gravitated towards it. I would say that would be the lasting legacy in terms of recognizing if Wendy could do that, right, with everything that was sitting on her plate, then you can do it too.
She was a leader. She stepped right up to the plate, and I think that one of the things that she leaves behind for all of us is to convey to the next generation that we have to step up.
And those leaders, making the world a better place and doing our part and not stopping. And I think she was one of the biggest role models to show that there's no excuses.
It's a pleasure to be responsible. It's a pleasure to do for others. It's a pleasure to see something through. It's a pleasure to build people and communities. I think that's her legacy.
Be a person who is tikkun olam, who helps people individually become the best selves they can.
All of the love that she poured into
her family and her children, and the ability for us to be able to pass that on to our own.
That's what the legacy means to me. The love that will live on, and her good deeds for generations to come.
She just helped the world to be a better place.
I feel humbled to be standing in front of so many amazing individuals right here. I feel right back at home. Matthew and I came here 7 years ago to the village shul, and Wendy was right there with Bob right when we came. And from the get-go, from the moment that I met her, she was always thinking big. She said, Shlomo, we brought you guys in right now. How can we take the teens to the next level? How can we, make the shul even more vibrant? And before we were offered the job 5 years ago with Aish Toronto to take it to the next level with the university students, young professionals, I went to her advice. And she said, Shlomo, as much as you did down here, and we're going to miss you guys, we have 40,000 students, young professionals that we need to tap into. And we got to think bigger. And I said, Wendy, I think we're doing pretty good down here. We have so much going on. We don't want to leave. We love the community. It's so warm and loving. And she said, Shlomo, how are we going to take it to the next level? And some people just talk the talk. But I remember when she came to our home about 3 years ago. And she was in the middle of treatments between herself and Josh. And I said, Wendy, no, it's okay. We got it. It's all good. Like, Mati and I are going to figure everything out. And she said, no, I'm coming. I need to be there. We need to speak to be able to see how are things progressing? Because that was her, talking about responsibility. There was nothing too big or too small for her. And when I was listening into the funeral today from Rebbitzin Weinberg, it was interesting. That was the last speech that I heard. One of her sons got up and said, she took responsibility for the Jewish people. And I said, how apropos is it that tonight, this was planned months ago, the amount of time and dedication that her amazing family put into it, and the Heitmans and everyone else that put so much time and effort, and it happened to have been tonight? Honor God. But that was Wendy. Of course, everything had a bigger purpose, and it was meant to be. That all of us are going to be, coming here because that's what she stood for. So I took her advice. I started over here with our executive board, with the students, with the teenagers, and thank God we got bigger. Took our advice and we said, okay, how do we take it to the next level? And we set up a beautiful mentorship program because as much as we have, thank God, we have about 500 students and young professionals involved right now. Some of them are in the crowd. We had 400 people come for a Jubilee dinner and 300 people for a Purim meal. But, our team is great, but there's so many more people, so many people that are waiting and wanting to learn from so many of, the people in our city who are so equipped for it. And we set up 60 people, a mentorship program, which she kept on saying we need more of. Shlomo, you're great, but look at how many amazing people there are in the community. Bob is one of our amazing mentors, thank God, right? Stepping up and calling me and saying, I want to be one of them. And many others. And with her in mind, 3 years ago, we actually went to Spain. And there were about 800 students, young professionals from 21 countries. And the students that all of, the community invested into, they won the #1 award in North America and Canada for the amount of impact that they made together. And we're going back to Spain again, actually. Funny thing, in about 2 months, with another group of 800 people from around the world. And we're looking to do even more. tell you a personal story that just happened 2 weeks ago. A student who said, you know, Rabbi, you're connecting me with one of these people from the community. I don't know if I'm going to go with them so well, whether it's going to go. And I remember after a second meeting, he said, Rabbi, I've never been so inspired. I want more and more of this. I need more connections to more people in our community. I'm going to start giving charity, and my mentor inspired me. And I remember thinking, wow, Wendy had that vision. She said, why think small? Think bigger. So what's tonight all about? What's this program that we're trying to take to the next level? I like sports. I'm a big sports guy. So in football, and the football season was just over. They have many coaches, lots of coaches all around. But each coach, offensive, defensive, right? Every coach has a special part of the person's journey to be able to get to, right? To get to the top. And I think Wendy, if I could say this, Bob, I think this is something that she stood for. She left her legacy, I think, is for all of us to step up. When I came to Wendy and I told her, Wendy, I had 250 people at our party. She said, 250? How do we get it to 500? And when we got up to more numbers, she was like, okay, what's our next step? And the students right here are wanting, they're asking me, I literally have so many students involved that are saying, Rabbi, we need more mentors. And this, I think, could be the biggest thing for her legacy. To be able to say that I made a difference, just like Wendy. Wendy had every excuse to say, it's too much. I'm in the hospital for myself, for my family. Right, it's cold. All the different excuses that we could come up with. But her passion and love spoke worlds. And there was nothing too big or too small. And my wife and myself probably wouldn't be here today personally, if not for her. Because when things got a bit tough, she was there at the first moment. She said, Rabbi, we're speaking tonight. How are we taking this? What's going on? Because she cared. Her love was like we said, if she was on your side, you could do anything. You could fly. And knowing that we had Wendy behind us to be able to help not only us, but the entire community, be able to achieve goals that I never could have ever imagined would happen. The number one in North America and Canada, it's not me. It's our students. It's the community. It's every single one of you. Because many of the people in this room are mentors to these people, whether it was a Shabbat meal or a coffee or letting them follow them. I had a dentist who let one of her mentees come around with her for the day. It's living with them and giving over to them. And I give us all a blessing tonight that the same passion that Wendy lived with and for her entire life, we should be able to continue her legacy in the biggest way for her amazing family and for the entire Jewish people. Have a great night.
Incredibly humbled to be standing here tonight, talking about somebody who is a giant in our times. I am standing up here to be the first presenter of 3 awards, 3 leadership awards. And when we think of leadership in modern times, we often think about the charisma, the person who's so eloquent, the strongest, most courageous, bravest, most outspoken person. Isn't that leadership after all? The one in the limelight up on the stage? And then you think about Jewish history, And you look at our greatest leader, Moshe. Was he an eloquent speaker? Was he charismatic? He had two main traits, in my opinion, and I want to mention one. Moshe never asked, "Can I?" Never. It was always about what has to get done. He listened. What does the Almighty want? If Hashem says something has to get done, then he has to go do it. Never did he question his adequacy. It may seem like that, but he didn't. Wendy is the same. She never ever said, I never heard her question, do I have the ability, the strength, the health, the wherewithal, the wisdom to get something done? She only asked, what is it that Hashem wants from us? What does the Almighty want? Because if that's what he wants, then we have to get it done. Now let's figure out how. That was Wendy. So when I was asked to think of an honoree for this Legacy Leadership Award, it wasn't easy. There are many. But one person in our community who joined with a fiercity, who joined the same way Wendy lived her life, is Risa Levine. Risa, can I ask you to come on up, please? Just going to read this here. The Wendy Zinner Zechrona Levracha, may her memory be for a blessing, Legacy of Leadership Award presented with appreciation to Risa Levine, Aish Torah, Toronto, the Village Shul, and TCS, March 12th, 2023, Yud Tes Adar, Tuf Shin, Pei Gimel. Risa, you're somebody who literally embodies what Wendy was all about. Not can I do it, but what has to get done? What does Hashem want? God willing, your work and the continued work that you do in our community should continue to be a blessing in Wendy's memory, and her neshama should have an aliyah in merit of all that we are doing, in merit of all that you are doing in our community. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm honored to present the Wendy Zinner Legacy of Leadership Award to our dear friend, incredible pillar of our community, Raquel Levine. Raquel is the quintessential jack of all trades, attorney, pro bono attorney, but only for the Thornhillwood Shul, mother, board member of the Thornhillwood Shul for life, although she doesn't know that yet, and really active in all areas of the community. Her and her husband David are involved in countless things, and even things I don't know about, and I'm the rabbi of the shul. Raquel was born in Montreal, and since she and David came to Toronto, they and their children Evan and Miles have been instrumental to the growth of the Thornhillwood's Jewish community and the Thornhillwood Shul specifically. As I mentioned, she's been on the board of directors for the past 6 years, and again, counting forever. David is the gabbai extraordinaire, and they really are involved in countless ways that I can't begin to mention right now. But it's not just the actions, and like Wendy, it's far more than the deeds, because with Raquel and David, only their humility surpasses their deeds. You will not know anything that they do. There is no fanfare. It is no frills. Just let's get the job done. Responsibility personified. Their humility surpasses their deeds and therefore serves as an inspiration to me, to my wife, to my family, to our whole community. But her biggest nachas are her children. When she sends me pictures of Evan getting another 100 on his test and saying, look at my nachas, and I say, great, I never got such high marks, don't send that to me. I appreciate that. Or when she sends me pictures of Wednesday night pizza parsha, look, the boys finished the book of Genesis with David, isn't that amazing? This is her true joy, the joy of watching her children grow in the ways of Torah and mitzvot, and how her husband is accomplishing incredible things with his learning and with his chesed as well. And in a world with a lot of noise, Raquel manages to accomplish an enormous amount and run from fanfare, two things that are impossible to do together, and she does it. We are grateful and thrilled that she accepted this honor, as hard as it was. I hope it serves as a motivation, inspiration for my community, for all of us, for Toronto. You know, Reb Blackman referenced the Rebbetzin Weinberg's funeral today. It was Rabbi Yehuda Weinberg who picked up the mic right before they picked up the coffin, and he said that she was known for her responsibility, which is certainly true. He said one other thing, which struck me, and of course it's appropriate. He said that Rebbetzin Weinberg was a mevakesh. She was a seeker. That line just punched me in the gut. She was the ultimate seeker. When I think of David and Raquel together, they are the ultimate seekers. Seekers of wisdom, of truth, of giving, of chesed, of responsibility. And it behooves all of us in the memory of Rebbetzin Weinberg and in memory of Wendy, who was also a mevakesh, and the other two honorees as well, to continue to be mevakshim, that we must be seekers of truth. We must seek out our fellow brothers and sisters and bring them back to this beautiful Judaism that perhaps is dormant within them. That is the message for tonight. Raquel, please come up and accept this award on behalf of Aish Toronto and our community. The Thornhillwood Shul is grateful beyond description for your care, love, attention. Mazel tov, may you, David, Evan, and Miles continue to shine, be a light in the great white north, that is Thornhill Woods, and for the entire Jewish people. Mazel tov. Shall I read it? Okay. The Wendy Zinner Legacy of Leadership Award presented with appreciation to Raquel Levine, Aish Torah Toronto, the Village Shul, and TCS, March 12th, 2023, Yud Tes Adar Tafshin Pei Gimel. Mazel tov.
In recent weeks, we read in the Torah about an individual by the name of Bezalel. Bezalel was given by the Almighty the ability to do just about any craft. Anything needed to be created, to be fixed, to be worked on, to be made beautiful, it was Bezalel who did it. But the one plus that the Jewish people had was that they were told about Bezalel before he started to work. So first there said, behold, there is Bezalel, and Bezalel will be able to tan the leather, and he'll teach you how to do all of the work in the areas of engineering, and every area from making gold and silver to working with spices. And the next day it started. We didn't have that privilege. In our shul, I would notice that perhaps the parochas are fraying a little bit, and the next morning, they weren't. And the next day, I would notice that perhaps the door was squeaking a little. And the next day, it didn't. And that's because we weren't warned about the Bezalel within our shul. And the Bezalel within our shul was a woman who has the ability to work in many different areas of crafts. Very, very, very erudite in her ability to work, be it in being a seamstress, to working with every type of area, and yet we weren't warned about it. So I thought it was as if we had a ghost in the shul that every day was fixing things. And so one day I noticed that it was Barbara Nightingale. And Barbara was using, in a very quiet, humble way, all of her abilities and her crafts and her knowledge and all the different areas that she did to beautify the shul. And no one really realized who it was. I've had the pleasure to know Barbara for probably close to 15 years. And in the last few years, when she joined forces together with Murray, I think she affected Murray that he does the same things, but he affected her that she's found her voice. So beyond all of these efforts that she's done, she's now taken a leadership role to be able to manage, to engineer, to be the architect in many ways of beautifying our synagogue, working with our volunteers, helping in virtually every area that at one time she did so quietly has now come more to the forefront because she's found her voice. So together, Murray and Barbara have made an enormous difference in our shul. At first, it was one that we noticed, but we didn't know who was doing it. And now we have the pleasure of letting all of you know about this very special member of our shul, very special couple within our shul, was Barbara Nightingale and her husband Murray. So I'd like to ask if Barbara would come up for a moment. And as I mentioned, it was every area of beautifying our shul has now developed into her assisting others to be able to do that as well. So be it the women who help us with the Kiddush, to the other individuals who are volunteering in one area or the other, now Barbara has found her voice and she teaches others to do the same things that she's done. So it's really my honor to be able to present to her this very special award. It's written somewhere, right on here? There we go. Yeah, hit it on me. The Wendy Zinner Legacy of Leadership Award is presented with our appreciation to Barbara Nightingale by Aish Torah Toronto, the Village Shul, and the Thornhill Community Shul. It's really my pleasure and my honor to be able to really show some recognition to a woman who's been there for all of us for so long and has finally given us the ability to let you all know who that is. So Barbara.
We heard about Wendy's impact on the community time and time again, her impact on Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, hundreds of students going all over the world, initiatives that Wendy herself was so proud to be involved in. But her greatest impact, as was mentioned earlier tonight, was her family. Bob, Jordy and David, Josh, Adam and Sherry, the grandkids. You guys embody Wendy more than anybody else. We talked about the love, the chesed, the care and compassion that she had. I have to confess a little secret. Shortly after I moved here, I was here for a while and, eating in different people's homes in the beginning. And shortly after, Rabbi Hach shared with me, he said, you don't want to get in a situation where you have to say, I would eat in this people's house, I wouldn't eat in those people's houses. So better to just have a rule, like you just don't eat out because then, you don't insult anybody and you don't question anybody's kashrut. I said, okay, that sounds like a good rule. I guess I'll adopt that, to my chagrin. But, so for a while, a long while, I was turning down every single invitation. And then Wendy says, come, let's meet at my house. And we're having this meeting. And right in front of me, she took them out of the oven as I walked in, were these cookies. And I could almost see, like in the cartoons, I can almost see like the aroma coming off of them. It was like almost visible. That's how good they smelled. And she's like, would you like a cookie? I'm like, no, I can't. She's like, why? And I tried to explain. All I can tell you is it didn't go. She wasn't going to have it. Needless to say, my confession tonight, okay, I had the cookies and they were amazing, by the way. But it wasn't about the cookies. It was about her so badly wanting to give to the other. It was always about the other person, and her family embodies that. On behalf of the event committee, it's my honor to present to Bob and Josh, Jordana and David, Sherry and Adam, a gift acknowledging tonight's event and the future leaders and mentors who will follow in Wendy's footsteps. If I can kindly ask you to come on up. I'll just read one of them, but there's one for each. Presented to the Zinner family, commemorating the Wendy Zinner Zatzal Legacy of Leadership event and annual award, March 12th, 2023.
You all know who I am. I'm not going to bother, but I'm speaking on behalf of the siblings and my father tonight. So good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here with us today to celebrate my mother's memory. We are so blessed to be surrounded by family and friends. Tonight's attendees are joining us from far and wide, from the GTA to Israel, Australia, and the US. All my girls and my in-laws, love you. Thank you for supporting us through the emotional roller coaster ride that is planning and coming together for an event like this. This wound is still fresh, and channeling our loss into celebrating Wendy, Mummy, and the community that meant so much to her is such a nachama, such a comfort to us. The generosity of your time and your funds has moved us to tears. It is so meaningful to be able to give to causes that my mother was so passionate about, as well as coming together to identify and celebrate members of the community who are making a difference. It is all so out of this world special, and I know she is here with us just beaming. I would like to sing the praises of our chairs for this evening, Dr. Stuart Heitman and Andrea Dan Heitman, our Auntie Andrea and Uncle Stuart. Thank you for your support and your guidance in making tonight a reality. Your advice along this journey gave us such strength, and I am eternally grateful. It was also a rare and out-of-body experience working with Rabbi Mendel and Zach Gorelick and Wendy Sacks. I know she's out there somewhere. Just putting the names and faces together, people who I knew from board meetings and meetings over the years, conference calls and email chains, for many, many events over the years with Mummy. Thank you for your hard work and the kavod that you have given my mother. Thank you. Okay, emotions. Every time I enter this shul, I feel her presence. She knew every stone, every tile, every light fixture, and at one time she knew almost every shul goer. Not because she was a regular attendee, but because we were blessed to have them grace our Shabbat table. She was a high holiday attendee, that was her gal, that was the time, that's where her attendance really shone. But she couldn't possibly be at shul weekly when she was needed at home getting 4-course meals ready, filled with new recipes, mixing exotic flavors with classic Ashkenazi staples, sushi pizza served alongside gefilte fish, caponata and olive tapenades next to eggs and onions, and the most glamorized chopped liver you'll ever know. And this was not just any Shabbat table. She created a culinary journey that encouraged all attendees at every level of observance and every walk of life to not only feel welcomed, but to feel like they belonged. Her mastering of Haknasat Orchim, the welcoming of guests, and the way that she put that mitzvah into practice was otherworldly. Her reputation preceded her. Most people on their walk home from shul to our home knew that they were going to be getting a spectacular meal. They came for the meal, but they stayed for her. And when I say stayed, I really mean stayed. People napped. We held 4-part harmony Havdalah, and then she sent you home with leftovers. Her kindness and ability to make her guests feel like family and eventually become family was incredible to behold. Offering advice and guidance, a shoulder to cry on or laugh to tears with, a confidant, a mentor, a friend who, after meeting them just once, would go above and beyond for them without hesitation, without question. Our superwoman cookie tray in hand, meals at the ready for anyone in need or just in need of a pick-me-up. She did this and planned events and fundraisers while battling diseases, in and out of hospitals, advocating and maneuvering through a sometimes impossible medical system, and advocating for her and my brother, and on her and my brother's behalfs. She had the fullest plate, and she had every right to combust and take a step back, but she did the opposite and made each one of us feel like we were the center of her universe while juggling the unimaginable. Late in life, my mother developed an impossible reaction to a standard injection. We always knew she was 1 in a million. And that caused her to develop anaphylactic allergies. The allergy list went on forever: potatoes, peppers, pineapples, nuts. She still cooked with the majority of them, so her family and guests would never feel like there was something lacking. The woman would be popping Benadryl while working away in the kitchen, surrounded by the smells of scalloped, mashed, roasted, or baked potatoes. She was selfless to her core. My mother's legacy lives on through this community and the inspiring details that have been shared with us throughout this evening. It will also live on through her recipes. The favorites that you tried and delighted in at her table, and had to get the recipe for yourself so you could bring them home to your own. I still receive texts and calls, often from family and friends. I know Aurora does as well, asking for her short ribs recipe, for Auntie Wendy chicken, her biscotti, upside down French toast. Each meal, each dish is a memory I cherish, and in sharing some of her favorite recipes with you this evening, I pray that you will do the same. A perfect pairing for this evening, another epicurious soul in our midst. It is our absolute pleasure to have Jamie Geller join us as our keynote speaker tonight. Jamie's classic chicken soup was sent to me by Mummy 6 years ago, and I have never looked back. Also, I have to mention, just with Hashkachat Pratit mentioned tonight, I was sitting down to look at my speech last night and sitting at a desk that Mummy and I shared. When I was in New York, she'd use it for board meetings and different times to make notes and all sorts of lists. And I opened up the drawer and pulled out the first paper on top, and it was your French onion rogalach recipe. So it felt like Hashem and her are just shining, and you are absolutely meant to be here. So Jamie Geller is the Chief Media and Marketing Officer at Aish. She is also a best-selling cookbook author, celebrity chef, television producer, and businesswoman. I urge you all to find her on social media. She is an amazing follow. Welcome, Jamie.
Wow, the energy in this room. Oh my gosh, first of all, you really it really moved me. I understand the connection of why I'm here, the food and the culinary, but I think it's so much deeper. And I feel like now just so much learning about Wendy and hearing about her, I would have chosen her to be my mentor. And now I will gain inspiration from her, even in Shemaim, even up in heaven. And I almost didn't make it, by the way. It took me 24 hours to get here. I arrived to the airport with 2 passports, an American and an Israeli one, right? Because I'm a citizen of both, neither of which worked. One was my son's and one was not valid, expired, okay? So it really is, and everyone has said to me, Wendy was working up there in Shemaim to make sure that you get to this event. I had to be here, and I feel that just being in this room. Jordy, Bob, Josh, Sherry, thank you for the tremendous privilege to get to know your mother in this way. And I think I'll share a little bit of my story because I think it's connected to Aish and to food, and hopefully we'll get a few laughs because there have been a lot of tears. Okay, so I wrote this cookbook called Quick and Kosher, Recipes from the Bride Who Knew Nothing. And when I got married, I didn't know the difference between a spatula and a saucepan, and I didn't really care. Okay, and so I write the book, and I tell a lot of my stories about what it was like to become religious, and what it was like to become married, and what it was like to to learn how to cook in the kitchen. And the publisher says to me, you're not just going to have to, this book doesn't just go on the shelf and sell itself. You're going to have to go on tour and cook. And I'm shaking in my pants, right? Or my skirt. Because I just learned how to cook yesterday. I don't have to go around tour and cook and show for these recipes. And I didn't only get requests to share demos and to do recipes, but I got requests to tell the story of how I came to be in front of you without knowing how to cook. So it basically started when my parents moved from Transylvania to Pennsylvania in 1963. Okay, and I always say my grandmother probably went fishing herself for the carp or whatever it is you use to make homemade gefilte fish. I just used the frozen loaf out of the freezer. It was on the cover of the first book. But they were intuitively knowing, like born knowing how to cook. Anyone here from Transylvania? Hungry? We'll talk about how we might be related later, okay? My grandmother made the 7-layer dobosh torte. Okay, every single layer was baked separately, smothered in homemade chocolate, and topped with caramelized brown sugar. And I always say that's Hungarian cooking for you, like 7 days to make and 7 seconds to eat. And when my mother came to America, she had dreams for her daughter to be anything and everything but a balabusta. Barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen was not her plans for me. So she sent us to the greatest schools, college preparatory schools. And when I was 9 years old, she took me to a family field trip to Harvard. Okay? And when we were walking through the leaves, they were falling, it was beautiful. She said, one day you'll go to school here. And when I was falling asleep at night, that special time with your mother, I'm sure you can recall, as she's reading, a story to you and your eyes are closing and she's talking to you, hoping that it will seep into your subconscious and become a reality. And when I was falling asleep, she would say to me, Jamie, when you grow up, you will be the first woman, Jewish president of the United States. Okay? So then I go to NYU, and you guys are like, what happened to Harvard, right? I mean, SAT scores aside, I actually had a desire to become famous. Okay, my parents were married, and they were divorced. Then they married each other again. Then they had us. Now they're divorced again. We are actually products of the second marriage of the same people to each other, okay? I tried for three's a charm, by the way. The last family Hanukkah party did not go well. So, and my parents got separated a lot growing up, and I just had this kind of childhood where I was always searching for what would be the recipe, pun intended, for a perfect and happy life. And I thought it was to become famous. I saw celebrities, they were wealthy, they were thin, they were smiling, and I was like, this seems to be a great job. So I can't sing, I can't act, so what am I gonna do? So I go to NYU for journalism school. I feel like I'll be like a Barbara Walters, a Diane Sawyer. Now you guys know who that is, right? But I talked to lots of different types of audiences, and one time I spoke in Monroe, if anyone knows that, where it's in New York, but English is the second language. And I was telling a little story about a girl named Madonna, who I'll tell you about in a minute. And you could hear a pin drop. Like I drop celebrity names so that I get like the giggles in the crowd, And I talk about Madonna and nothing. And so after this lady came up to me and said, I just want you to know, I know who Madonna was. I just didn't want my friends to know that I knew, okay? So you guys know Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey. I figured I could study journalism and, become famous. So NYU doesn't have like the best journalism school out there. Northwestern's great, Emory, wherever, Syracuse. But New York afforded internship opportunities. 5 minutes in? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not keeping everyone because it's delicious food downstairs and we know food was very important. So New York affords internships and job opportunities like no other place. So I chose NYU so that I could call up Lori when I got to New York. And that call went a little something like this. Not Rebbitzin, Lori Platt. I couldn't, another Lori. And I said, she picks up the phone, ring, ring, ring. Hello. I'm like, hi, Lori. Silence. I'm like, hi, it's Jamie. Silence. I'm like, remember me? Silence. I met you outside the bathroom at Rosh Hashanah services 6 years ago. Well, I'm in New York and I want a job. And this is how I know Lori. My mother's best friend growing up, Betty's ex-boyfriend, Sam, is on a second marriage to Bonnie, whose daughter from the first marriage was Lori, who I met outside the bathroom at Rosh Hashanah services 6 years ago. She worked at CNN and she told me to look her up when I got to New York. So I really thought like CNN, I'm gonna go be like the serious reporter. It turns out Lori works for a show called Showbiz Today. It's now called Showbiz Tonight, but it's like Access Hollywood or Entertainment, Entertainment Tonight for CNN, covering international entertainment news globally for the network. And that's where I got my internship. And I had the most amazing opportunities. I went to the Oscars, the Emmys, the VH1 Fashion Awards, the MTV Music Awards. I was at every award show, interviewing every single celebrity under the sun. And I always say you could tell a lot by a society by who it is that they celebrate. My mom would be like at a cocktail event, and like, you know, people are saying, oh, what does your son do? What does your daughter do? So some woman would be like, oh, my son's a heart surgeon. And people are like, oh, that's so nice. And then my mother would be like, oh, my daughter's a producer at CNN, and she was just at the Oscars. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So it really shows like our priorities as a society and who it is that we elevate. So anyway, I'm there at every single award show and interviewing every single celebrity, and my mother's so concerned that I should meet the wrong guy at the wrong place, and I really need to meet a nice Jewish guy, and they weren't hanging out at the after party of the MTV Music Awards. So she sent me to these singles classes, one of them being Aish, New York, on the Upper West Side. And that was when I first got introduced to Judaism in a completely different way. Until then, I heard a wonderful Rebbitzin in New York describe it like this. Until then, Judaism had punctuated my life, but I didn't know that it could permeate my life and be part of my life in such a different way. And so I decide, long story short, that I want to become Shomer Shabbos. I want to start keeping the Sabbath. But I decide to do this in December when Shabbat starts at like 4, okay? And I work for this live show that's live every day at 4:30. And I always say, like, you could be anywhere, but you have to be there for the live show. So I walk into my boss Scott's office to tell him that I'm going to quit. And just to give you some background, Scott is a nice Jewish man on his second marriage to a Buddhist convert. And I don't know if it's custom or halacha, like what it is in the house, but they don't raise their voice when they get angry. They just ring a bell. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. And I'm like, I'm from Philly. I would need the Liberty Bell, you know, to get out my frustration. And so I walk into Scott's office and I say, Scott, you know, I have to quit. And he basically says to me, good luck ever finding a job in the TV industry with this new Shomer Sabbath thing of yours. So 2 weeks later, I get a call. I did, well, first I'm going to tell you, if anyone can guess what I do next. I quit my job. What am I doing next? Cooking? Not yet. We're not there yet. I head to Israel to really just sort of immerse myself and go to seminary. So I'm in Israel in seminary 2 weeks, and I get a call that the entire show was canceled, Showbiz Today. Scott, Lori, and everyone else lost their job, and that all happened without being Shomer Sabbath. And then I get another call a few minutes later, not even a joke, from a friend at HBO who says, can you be on the set of Sopranos next Thursday? And I said, sure, I can be on the set of Sopranos next Thursday. I didn't want to leave the TV industry. I just couldn't keep my job, which was live television, with being Shomer Shabbos. So what I did was I went and wanted to have my cake and eat it too. And I headed back to New York, and I was a TV producer for HBO. I worked on Sopranos, Sex and the City, sorry, we're in the shul, Mind of a Married Man, Entourage, Janet Jackson's concert, Madonna, Band of Brothers, Angels in America, everything that you can think of at that time around, and really, really thought life was amazing. And I would interview celebrities. And, you know, I've been telling this story for a while. It has a little bit of a different connotation now. But celebrities who were like, had achieved the greatest things, the most honors, had been awarded everything, who had everything at their disposal, and they weren't happy. And the story about Madonna that I want to tell you about, when we did the Madonna Drown World Tour, so we actually, this is a little secret, don't tell anyone, but through special effects, we stretched her so that she would appear both thinner and taller. And that was at her request. Okay, and I would feel like, you know, nothing that they had, nothing was good enough. Their life wasn't happy enough. And I just felt like I got into this industry because I wanted to be famous, and I thought that that's where happiness was. But it seemed to not be like hiding in the corners of Hollywood. And so I decided, what am I doing next? Not yet cooking. We're almost there. I got to get married first. Who am I going to cook for? Okay, so I decide to start shidduch dating. Now, does anyone know what that is? Right? I always say matchmaker. Matchmaker is not just a song and Fiddler on the Roof. Tevye should rest in peace. He just passed away. But it's a real job and a real profession. People helping singles find their match. So I go to these matchmakers all over, whether I'm in LA or London or New York. And I was like the one-hit wonder. I dated over 50 guys, and I was terrible, terrible. I'm like, there's no one for me. I just wanted to crawl into a ball and eat cholent and cry because I'm never, ever going to find my husband. And then someone suggests a guy for me, and she wanted to know a little bit about me. So she said, I think I have someone good for you. How old are you? So I tell her. Where are you from? So I tell her. What do you do for a living? So I tell her I'm a TV producer. She's like, okay. She's thinking kindergarten teacher, speech therapist, like, well, you know, you want to marry a rabbi or someone that looks like a rabbi? What are you doing being a TV producer? She didn't say any of that, by the way. That was just, I saw it all in her eyes, you know? And so, anyway, she sets me up with this guy. 2 weeks later, I'm engaged. 2 months later, I'm married. 5 years later, we have 5 kids. Now we had our 6th. I always say Quick and Kosher is not just the name of my first book. It's a metaphor for my entire life, okay? And that's when I had to learn how, oh, thanks. The women are clapping because they know that's not easy, right? And that's when I had to learn on the job how to cook. And I just was like one mistake after the next. But I wrote the stories about my mistakes down. And so the real first book, Where Jordy Got the Chicken Soup, it's really about the 101 fails that I had before I made that chicken soup. And I don't know if you remember the intro, but this is just the story of the first time I made chicken soup. And then we'll hand you off to the hors d'oeuvres. I'm married, guys, for like not even a week, okay? It's the first Shabbos together. I'm wearing my 6-inch stiletto heels, okay? My size 4 suits that I'm still in the back of my closet hoping I can fit into them. One day I'll get there. And I'm wearing a wig, you know, like down to here, okay? And just so you know, like Shabbos doesn't look like that in my house anymore. I always say like, I wear those like $5 Chinese slippers you get at the mall, an empire waisted Shabbos robe that's like, it's really a robe. I don't know why they call it, but like just because it's called a Shabbos robe, you can wear it out to the table and it fits no matter what. And I wear this thing called a tichel, which some of you, it's like a shmata, also known as a do-rag, also known as a scarf. And I remember one time we were lost in Brooklyn and there was like some shady deal happening on the corner. And my daughter said, oh, mommy, he has the same tichel as you. Yeah. So anyway, that's really what it looks like in my house on a Friday night. But back then, that first week married, I'm like teetering on my heels and bringing out this chicken soup. And I had said to my husband, what do you like in your soup? Because I didn't know, like I just met him yesterday. And he tells me, I like everything. So I really gave him everything. I gave him a whole onion, a bunch of parsley, a carrot the size of my forearm sticking 4 inches out of the soup because I knew you're supposed to put a lot of veg in, but I didn't know you're supposed to cut it. And that was my first week. So I feel like I could have gotten a lot of mentoring from Wendy also in the cooking fields. I hope that I'll make her proud now. I'm thrilled that she has my French onion rougalach recipe. And I love that she loved to innovate from a culinary perspective. I think that's the most fun that we can have in the kitchen. But food is an expression of love. And she has just shown here that she loved it. We have been shown here tonight that she loved everyone and everyone loved her. And I have fallen in love with her through this. And like I said, she will be a forever inspiration to me for bringing me here to this night to see what it means to be a woman who is a leader in a community, who takes responsibility, who can make a difference. There's so much work left to be done. Their program is now, the mentorship program, is to raise the future leaders who can help to complete her work. And Rebbitzin Lori Palatnik and I were just sitting there, and she said, the work needs to be finished. We need to do it. And I said, do you think we can? She said, of course we can. And with Wendy praying for us up in Shemaim, I know that we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you everyone for being part of tonight, this special evening, celebrating the life of a special person and the leadership that's going to be inspired from that person. Anyways, the program is over tonight, and we are finishing off with a dessert reception downstairs. Everyone's welcome to join. And for anyone also who wants to stay for Maariv, we're going to be having a Maariv right here as soon as everyone makes their way downstairs. Good night and enjoy the rest of the evening.